So I'm delighted to say we have Jeff Neville on today's episode of the Locker Room Podcast. So Jeff is a rugby coach, a podcast host, and now a rugby analyst as well. So fáilte go the Locker Room Podcast, Jeff, come start to.
Yeah, go on.
Well, it's brilliant to have you on. I guess the typical question I have to ask is, how is COVID treating you?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't mind getting out and seeing people. I think that's the biggest thing I'm missing more than anything. It's, I suppose, just the social interaction. I know you can still do it via Zoom and phone calls and text, but I think we're actually all quite browned off of the Zoom quiz and the banana bread. So I'm just looking forward to seeing. I don't even want to go to a pub or a restaurant or anything. I just want to call over someone's house for tea and a cup of coffee, and that's it. Like, that's all I really want. But no, we're very lucky. I mean, myself and my wife, we haven't lost a job, and we haven't like everyone we know is healthy, and we had our first baby there about 6 weeks
congrats.
ago. So COVID's kind of taken, you'd forget about it almost at times because you're too busy trying to get to sleep or something like that. But no, it's been interesting, highs and lows, but certainly we're very lucky, overall. So I can't really complain,
No, that's good. That's a really mindset to have. And I think I've said that to a few people. I think, the difference going from your sort of life as a coach and seeing maybe 40, 50 people a day to now seeing absolutely no one, like, that's a big shift to make. But hopefully we're on our way out. I'm hoping so anyway.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you can't wait to, like, even like that, even like some Tuesdays or Thursdays, it might be lashing rain. You're thinking, geez, I don't want to go out in this now. Like, but once you get there, you're loving it. And like, to think we took something like that for granted is mental.
You're obviously involved in rugby for a little while, and people might know you better from the loose head on your social media platforms, and I think we'll come to that. But I think I'll just chat to you quickly about sort of your coaching experience. And I've been warned by my own team captain not to spill any secrets now, because the two teams we coach are in the same league. But obviously you're involved in coaching with Balbriggan Rugby Club with the senior women. So just like, how long have you been with them and how are you finding it?
Yeah, I'm there 2 years now, and I suppose I don't know if you'd even count this year because of how little you gotten on the pitch and stuff like that. But no, I love it. Yeah. It was different, and it's certainly something new for me going into it. Like, I'd never coached a women's team before. So when I was first asked, to be honest, I was actually really excited about it, to be honest, because I suppose you always want to challenge yourself and do something different. So it's actually been fantastic. And I suppose the first thing that struck me was I suppose just the pure hunger to learn more than anything. And like, I had come from coaching under 18 lads, and I suppose you can't tell a teenager anything, and sometimes you can, sometimes you can say, look, this should be that or XYZ, but when it comes to basics, or when it comes to something like that, a lot of young people may think, oh, I know how to do that, or I know how to pass, or I've tackled before, I know what that is. But when I went into Balbriggan, a lot of it was trying to bring something new and maybe try and break things down that small bit further and build it back up from the beginning. And the questions were unreal, the hunger for knowledge. A lot of questions were why, and to get it to when you're asked why, I'm a big believer, if you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it well enough yourself. So it kind of kept me on my toes as well, and brought me back to you just can't assume, because a lot of the time, you can't, you don't know, even in terms of language. Like, I use different language maybe than you do, or I use different language to a player might use, and suddenly they're thinking, what's he talking about, So coming back and breaking it back down was brilliant. And especially this season or last season, if you have a couple of new players, suddenly you have to go back right to the beginning, which is something you probably haven't challenged yourself to do in a couple of years, or maybe ever. You probably just assumed if you're playing the game at under 18s, or if you're playing the game at 20s, or senior that you've come through the ranks and you understand it all. So to go back initially to the initial basics was something that was brilliant, because it's a good refresher course for you, and it also challenges you to go back to understanding the game from the beginning again.
Yeah, and I guess obviously your analysis work and stuff at the moment will probably help tons with that. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that sort of, I coach under 16, under 18 boys, and then I also coach senior women. So it's the lads will just, you give them an instruction, they get on, they go straight into it. But with the women, they'll ask why, when am I going to use this? So it's definitely a challenge for a coach, and I think it's a great learning curve for coaches as well. Like, you should get involved with girls or women's rugby because it really challenges you.
Well, I think you said it there, that question of why. I think even regardless of what level you coach, that's a question that you should be asking the players. Like when you do a drill, like, why are we doing this? Even something as small as, let's say, a pull back pass off a pod, like, why are we introducing this? And if the players can't say, oh, because they're quick off the line, or they have a blitz defense and it gives you a chance, to get wider off that first wave, then, like, if they can't tell you that, then they don't fully understand it themselves. So I think asking why, regardless of the level, is important. And if they don't understand the why, I don't think they're going to learn it, or they're not going to take it on board as much as they probably could.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting as well, because those are sort of the little things that you pick up as a male coach in the women's game, of the difference between coaching, boys and men and girls and women. So is there anything else that you might have noticed in your times? I know a lot of other coaches sort of speak to, managing maybe the conflict and that kind of thing as well is a lot different in men's versus women's sports. So is there anything else maybe that you've noticed?
I found that the relationships were fine. I didn't think there was any conflict at all in the last couple of years, and maybe I just blind to it, I don't know. But I thought, like, everyone got on real well, and it's a very good group, and like they're so good. They're always looking out for each other. And anytime something's happened in the last 2 years, be it big or small, celebration or otherwise, it's been a real group effort. So, like, that was fantastic. And I think you'd see that in a men's team as well, maybe not to the same extent. But they've been really good. But in terms of coaching wise and stuff like that, any differences other than the questions, I don't really think so. You might have one thing that I did find was, and I wasn't expecting it at all. And it's just because, again, at the time I didn't have kids or anything like that. But I also had never coached a male senior team. It was always under 18s. So it never really came into the mix either. But I remember once one player texted and just said, oh, I can't come training tonight because we don't have a babysitter. And suddenly that was another challenge that it just never crossed my mind, beforehand, because I was with 17, 18-year-olds, and that just never came up. And it was just a challenge. Now, obviously, family comes first, so that was fine. That's no problem. But it was just little things like that you had to, if you only had 6 of training, were you still going to put it on because someone would have to get a babysitter, and it would be unfair on that person to come down for 40 minutes of what, so just kind of managing that side of it was a bit difficult. But difficult's not even a word, not even the word, I should say. It's it was more just like an added challenge that never kind of crossed my mind, I suppose, before going in. But again, like everything, it was very easy act to balance. Once it came up, you got used to it, and you dealt with it, and that was that. Like, and like I said, they're so understanding, and they're so good as well that like, if I was unsure of anything, I could always ask as well. And I suppose that's another kind of challenge I found was at the very start, I wasn't sure of what language to use, because I suppose I'd say something like, that's your man, and then I'd be like, oh, well, that's your player. And that's something that I found myself becoming very conscious of as well. And even on Twitter and stuff like that, when I'm talking about a game or when I'm talking about coaching, I'll always say, well, you have to ask your player. I won't say you have to ask him. And that's kind of, I suppose it should have been something on my mind before that as well. But it's like you learn as you go on, don't you? And it's that was another thing, just the use of language, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess it's only something that you become aware of when you're in that scenario, and I'd agree with that. I'm sort of someone that uses very gender neutral kind of terms. Like, I'd call everybody guys and everybody lads and that kind of thing, and it's never been an issue. But you can see definitely if you've come from a world where you're only saying boys or sort of masculine terms, it's a bit different coming into a women's team and using those same terms.
Yeah, a lot of the time though, you know, it wasn't a big deal. Like you might say, right, we're going to have a 5-man line out, but like, you know,
Yeah.
that just tripped off the tongue without thinking. And then suddenly I was like, should I be saying a 5-man line out, 5-player line out, 5-person line out? And you know, they just kind of laughed and they were like, 5-man's fine, like
Yeah.
it's what it's called, you know, it's cool. And I was like, oh yeah, that's grand. But then other times, like, you know, like I said, you know, that's your man, and I'd be like, okay, that's your player, you know, and just little changes like that, I suppose. But again, like in terms of a challenge, that's not a challenge. That's just becoming aware of it, you know. So no, it's really good. Like it's been a great year. This year's obviously different for everyone, like, you know. But I suppose the other challenge would be kind of the structure of the league and how I suppose when you're in it, you see how unimportant they are treated compared to other leagues or other ages or whatever it is, like, you know. And that's been a struggle as well, because before COVID last season, I think we just were told that there was a change in structure at the end of the season, and that was just, this is happening. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a conversation. It's just, this is happening, deal with it, kind of a thing. And you know, there's a few things like that, but again, it's just part of the challenge, I suppose, and like going to AGMs and trying to change minds and stuff like that, and getting in touch with the right people, you know.
Yeah, no, and look, I know from I know we've never met in person or anything, but I know from all of your social channels and stuff that, and especially from the sort of guests you've have had on your podcast, that, you know, you're one to advocate for women's rugby and women's sport in general. So I guess welcome to that world. But look, without going into any details on plays or anything like that, I think we'll move on, or else I might be murdered by my captain. So obviously, a lot of people will know you from the Loose Head. So just maybe if you could give us a background on how you set that up, what was the purpose of it, and how you're getting on now.
The purpose of it and why I set it up was actually because I used to work in a boarding school, and that entailed weekends. So sometimes at weekends, a game would be happening when you'd be supervising study, or you were stuck indoors and there mightn't be anyone to actually chat about it. So I literally set it up just so I could talk rugby to someone, to be honest with you. And I know there's WhatsApp groups and stuff like that, but I just wanted to talk about games and stuff like that. So I said I'd try it out, and it was just a hobby to me. It still is a hobby, like, you know, it doesn't pay the bills or anything, but it was just to start and chatting about rugby, and to kind of, I suppose, look to broaden my own knowledge and stuff like that, and discussion groups. And so that's exactly why I set it up, just out of boredom, to begin with. But yeah, it just kind of, like, I don't want to say it grew because it's not massive or anything like that, but it just kind of continued to get that little bit bigger, and with the passing of time, and with the, you know, few discussions, it just kind of grew like that. And that's just how it started. Yeah, just as a hobby.
Yeah, well, deadly. And I know you've gotten into a bit of analysis work now as well. So if people haven't checked it out already, obviously you're at the Loose H or at the Loose Head, depending on it.
Yeah, the Loose Head was taken by a guy who hasn't tweeted since like 2016. And I've messaged him, and I said, and like, I remember ages ago I messaged him and I said, look, I don't know if you're actually using this, but like, is the name up for grabs or anything? And I never heard back, so I just said I'd stick with the Loose H, and it seems to be working okay. So I guess I won't change it now, kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But yeah, you put up some very interesting sort of analysis stuff now recently, and obviously you're a big fan of Benetton as well. Benetton bandwagon is going, but yeah, I'd love to sort of know, like, obviously getting into the analysis stuff, I guess, you know, from a coach's perspective as well, it really sort of, I guess, ups your own game and ups your own knowledge and stuff. So, like, have you picked up anything from your analysis work? Have you learned anything that you didn't know previously? Has it helped?
Yeah, like we used to do, myself and a guy called Mark Roach back when we coached together. We used to do analysis on our games when we could get them videoed and stuff like that. The games we coached in, let's say, and we found that it helped massively just to look back on the game, because what you think is happening and what actually happened. And let's say you're thinking back to something that happened in the, I don't know, 12th minute, but you're after seeing another 62 minutes worth of stuff, or I hope that math is right. I don't think it is, but after seeing another 68 minutes worth of stuff or whatever, the way you remember it and what actually happened could be two different things. So we found that when we recorded the games, it was huge, like hugely useful. And I don't even mean pulling stuff like giving the game out and like asking people to watch the whole game. No, sometimes players did want to do that, but just little clips. Like, let's say I remember once I went down to Lansdowne, and because Rochi was playing with Lansdowne at the time, and he asked Mike Ruddock for me. So I went down and I just watched a forward session, and he asked if I had any questions. I said, just defensive lineouts. Like, how do you go about defensive lineouts? And he said, well, we're doing that tonight, so you can feel free to watch. And he's an absolute gentleman. If you ever come across him, he's fierce nice. But so we took his defensive drill and we looked at it, and he was running a 5-man drill or a 5-player drill off lineouts, and he was using just cones, and it was a case of working on your hinge and everything like that. So long story short, we brought that in, and I remember we had a game, and I watched a defensive lineout, and just watching one defensive lineout, it was the hinge. It was exactly as we had practiced and everything like that, and we stole it. And I remember I took a video of that clip and I sent it to Mike, and I said, that's the drill you showed me, I don't know, a month ago or whatever it was. Like, thanks a million. Like, it's really been useful. And he texts back and he said, that's excellent, and it's great to see. And it's good to see that you're looking at that analysis as well and making sure it is something that's working rather than something you're just doing for the sake of doing. And we found then that little things like, okay, we might watch a game and you might realize that, look, it could be the lineout, the lineout's not functioning and what's going wrong. And you could say, oh, while watching the game, you might look at 12 lineouts or whatever it is and say, okay, it could be anything, because you're looking from 40, 50 meters across the pitch or whatever. But then when you watch the video, you can say, okay, he missed his lift, or they didn't get there in time, or the throw was too high, or, it just made things that bit easier. So being able to clip those games then, or just being able to clip little moments of a game and saying this was very good, and even just something as simple as a picture, a screenshot, and you could say, look how bunched we are at the ruck there. Our pillar AB might be within 5 yards. Like, that needs to be better. And just being able to show them a picture rather than saying it. And it's when they see themselves in that situation, it's something, it just clicks in their head kind of thing. It's totally different. And we, like with Balbriggan now and everything, like we when we can, we video, and we do a small bit of video. We've done it a couple of times, not as much as I'd like, but that's part of everything, I suppose. But when we do it, and we show the video and we show clips and stuff like that, it's important, I feel, that not just that we're learning from it, but also that we're showing not just the negatives, I should say, but or the work-ons, but what we've really done well. And I remember doing one video session, and at the end I said, I'm not even going to show anything from the second half, because I remember this game, literally all we did for the second half was defend. And I just said, I'm not going to show anything from the second half, because the whole thing was positive. Like, everything was brilliant. You'd be here all day watching it. Like, and just showing little clips of, you might have like a hit of the day, or play of the day, or break of the day, just little things like that. And it could be something as simple as a player off the ball who's worked really hard to get in the position to do something, and just highlighting that and saying, like, that required no talent, or that required, they didn't have the ball like for 30 seconds before that, and they might have scored the try, but look where they came from, kind of a thing. And to applaud kind of the unseen work. And I suppose with the analysis then that I'm doing now, sorry if I'm rambling on, this is probably a long it's probably a long answer for a short
not at all
but the analysis now that I'm doing, it's just something simple, because we don't have coaching at the moment ourselves. And I just missed kind of that aspect of the game, and seeing what was going wrong or seeing what was going right, and what would you change or how would you highlight it. And it was just a case of just keeping myself ticking over. And as I was doing it anyway, I said, sure, I might as well just make a video and just send it out. And I put up a tweet not too long ago, and I said, any coaches who want it, you can have, and they, you can, like, because Bernard Jackman's another guy, and I've spoken to him a few times, and he's like, he does a lot of analysis, and he sent me a couple without me even asking. He just said, there you go, and have a look. And it was stuff he was putting on RTE maybe a couple of days later, and he was just saying, keep that to yourself, but this is what I'm looking at, and etc. And I remember one video he sent me, it was the kicking one he did, killing the Kings, which was very good. And he sent that to me, and a friend of mine's a defensive coach as well with Trinity, Shane Murray, and I said, do you mind if I pass that on to him? And he said, absolutely not at all, like, work away, it's fine, that's what it's for. So the fact he's so open with everything, just kind of makes me, well, a lot of coaches are quite open with everything. And so when I made those videos, I said, look, you can have them if you want. It's there to be learned from. And same with the podcast, same with everything. It's not behind a paywall. It's not behind a Patreon or anything. It's if it helps you, you can have it. And like, I've been quite lucky that I've been shadowed by, or I've shadowed coaches. I've worked with guys like Seamus Toomey, or I've worked with school coaches like who've been excellent as well. And even coaches, club coaches, you know, that I've worked with, and other players that I've worked with, and they've been so open and everything that I just feel, you know, it's important to kind of pass the buck, or to, well, pass the buck's a bad thing, isn't it? But pass it on, pass the knowledge on, you know, or whatever it is, like. And no, it was just a way to stay in the game and to kind of try and identify trends and stuff like that, or see little clips. Like we saw one line out that was excellent, and I remember I just thought to myself, like, that is such a simple form. And I sent it to our club captain. I was like, it's ideal. It's so simple, so straightforward. Let's bring it in, you know. And she was like, spot on. And like, you don't get that just by watching a game and kind of by half blinking, you know. I think you do have to study it a little bit. I'm not saying eat and breathe it, because I don't eat and breathe it either. But just kind of, you have to kind of look for things, I suppose, or you'll never find them, you know.
Yeah,
that was a very long answer. Sorry.
No, it was good. It was good. I think that's an interesting thing as well, because I've always wondered, sort of, you know, how do you develop that analysis eye? So how do you sort of pick those couple of instances that you want to put together and make a little clip out of?
I think sometimes it's just by seeing it. So I made a video before about Keatley, and that was just from watching Benetton Ospreys and seeing him with ball in hand, and he was just like quarterbacking the whole game. He was just putting Benetton in the right places, but it was the different kicks he'd use. So it might be a grubber, it might be just a bomb, it might be a little chip over the top, or something like that. But I remember watching the game and just thinking to myself, like, he is really, like, he's just quarterbacking this game brilliant. And maybe people are watching this game, especially maybe younger players, who are thinking, you know, oh, I'd love to be an out half or something like that. But just to make a little, I suppose, montage, for a better word, I don't know, but just explaining the reasons why he put in different kicks, and, you know, just saying it's not out of chance he did it. Like, you know, there's one kick he did in that video, and you can see the defense coming, you can see him point against the grain, and he just kicks it back in behind him, you know. And it's just pointing little things out like that, or you know, to spot these things then as well. Like, sometimes I don't, sometimes it might just be a strike move, and what interests me off that is, like, where did that player come from, or why did they go wide to come back in, or what did the defense do to allow that to happen? Like, there was another video, it was actually against Benetton, and they were down a yellow card, and I can't remember who scored it. I think it was against Dragons, but essentially the Benetton, sorry, had a midfield yellow, and it's just the move that or it could have been Connacht, actually, apologies, I think it was Connacht. And it's just the way they exploited that yellow card, because the winger had to come in and defend at 13, and suddenly that left space somewhere else, you know. So just little things like this to see why something happened or what happened. I wouldn't necessarily look for something, but one that it was Bernard Jackman brought to my knowledge. It was, he said you need 4 positives, and he was talking to me on the phone about this after watching a Leinster game, and he just broke it down very simply. He was like, Leinster scored here, but let's look 4 plays behind it. You know, Leinster kicked, and he should have dealt with this. It was a knock on, scrum penalty, line out, maul, penalty, etc. And he built it up in 4. And he was like, when you look at it, a lot of scores, you can see there's been 4 very good positives. A lot of teams, or a lot of, you know, coaches sometimes might look at the negatives and say, oh, they should have dealt with this better. But he said, but look at how well they capitalized on somebody else's mistake. That's a huge positive. And that's something I've actually seen an awful lot of. And sometimes when you see a score, like, I'll rewind it and I'll say, okay, where did that happen? Or where did they get the lineup before that? Where did that lineup come from? Do you know, was it a drop pass? Was it a good kick? And a lot of the times, like, it's surprising to see that it's actually 4 very good plays leading up to it. It's not just, you know, someone might look at a line out on the 40 meter and say, okay, they scored off a line out 30 meters out, or whatever it is. That was a really good play, but it might have been 4 or 3 or 5 very, very good plays before it, not to build momentum, but certainly to put them in the situation to do so, you know. So, again, very long answer for a very short question. I wouldn't necessarily look like I wouldn't sit down and say, oh, I'm going to look at XYZ and hopefully that happens, because you know yourself, you go to watch a game and you say, okay, I'm going to player cam this player, he's a mayor, you know, and it's a commentator's curse, I suppose, more than anything. But it's just more kind of noticing something and seeing, is that a constant thread, you know, and it might only happen twice, or you might notice something like I don't know how if you look at Racing and how they attack the fringe at the ruck, you know, and they always have eyes on a defender, and they always point to two defenders, you know. So just little things like that to see how common that is. But sometimes it might just be a spark or a strike play like that, or it just kind of depends what happens, you know.
Yeah, that's really cool. And would you have any advice for sort of coaches who are looking to sort of, I guess, you know, become aware of maybe trends in pro rugby or what's going on? Like, how do they start to pick up, I guess, those little, you know, the four positives, or how do they start to pick up, you know, what to look for?
I suppose just by watching a lot, just watch and kind of be aware of what you're looking for, I suppose. I think if you sit down and watch a game, like I'll sit down and watch a game absent-mindedly, you know, if I'm trying to get the baby to sleep or something like that, you're actually not watching the game, you know, or if you're on your phone, you're not really watching the game. You'll catch the commentator getting excited and you look up and you'll see something. But I think a lot of the time, if you want to see something, I think you have to go into it with the clear idea of, okay, I want to see how and something general. I don't think you can do it with something very specific. Like I want to see how I don't know. I want to see how they react off a line out 5 meters out, because that might only happen once, you know, or it might happen twice, you know. I think you have to say, okay, I want to see how Murray box kicks. I want to see how many times they get possession back immediately, possession back after maybe 3 phases, or if they lose possession completely. And I think doing that constantly and seeing, then, like, you might do it for, I don't know, a Munster game, then you might do it for a Connacht game, you might do it for a Leinster game, and you might see, okay, out of these 5 games altogether, there's been, I don't know, 50 box kicks. They got 10 back straight away, maybe 12 back after 3 phases, you know, something like that. I think you do have to be general enough, and if you go in with too detailed a vision, it's going to be very tough to pick out. And not only that, you'll miss what else is going on around, because you won't be looking for it. If you say, I want to see how Casey passes the ball, you might miss what, I don't know, JJ does on a 10, or, you know, who stands at first receiver how many times, you know. There's different things you might miss as a result. So I think just having a general idea of what you want to see, and just kind of keeping tabs on it. But also, I don't think there's any harm if you have the reach, or if you have the ability, or if you have the number of a coach, to text them beforehand as well and say, I'd like to, you know, I'm keeping an eye on this tonight. What do you think? Or even take a little video clip of it and send it on and just say, why did this happen? Or what's the story here? And I think there's so much to learn that way as well, from using not even social media, but something as simple as WhatsApp, you know, as a tool. That's massive as well, you know.
Yeah, and I think, like, generally, I guess because of the type of work that we have to do in coaching, like, a lot of coaches are, you know, sociable and willing to share and willing to talk. So I think that's a really good bit of advice, you know, just sort of reach out or post a question on Twitter kind of thing, and just, like, someone random might get back to you, but they might actually have the answer for you, which is cool.
I think reaching out is essentially the best thing you can do, because I mean, like, I don't know everything, and nobody does know everything. And I won't even begin, like, there's far more coaches out there with far more experience at far higher levels than I am. And I've reached out to them and they've gotten back to me, to the point where even like Ian Costello or Mike Prendergast over in Racing, or like even Bernard Jackman, you know, I feel that if I ask them a question, like I feel like I could take a video of something and say, is this X, Y, and Z? And that they would get back to me, because I mean, I've reached out before and they've been very kind with their time, you know. And I think the worst thing that could happen is they say no. Like, you could reach out and they might get back to you. Okay, fine. You might say, are you free for a phone call? Because I'd like to discuss something. They might say no. Okay, that's fine. But at the same time, if they say yes, you're going to take 2-3 points of knowledge away from that. And that's massive. That's something you can't read, or that's something you can't, you know, see on video. It's a discussion is massive.
Yeah, look, absolutely no harm in asking, I guess. Yeah, and just the last thing on your sort of analysis work then, have you seen any trends lately in pro rugby?
In terms of trends, I've seen, well, I think we've all seen a lot more kicking over the last maybe year or two, certainly the last year. And that's just a result of the breakdown laws, I suppose. And I think Eddie Jones said it himself, the team who kicks most wins, and I suppose it's easier to defend now because of those breakdown laws. But other ones would be, and Murray Kinslow was very hot on this for a while, was the off the tail of a lineout, just that inside ball back in. And I know was it Kevin O'Byrne was throwing those passes there a couple of times there, and it's just coming out around the back off that. And I'm pretty sure Dragon scored against Connacht, or was it Benetton, in the exact same fashion, just coming back off that kind of strike.
I saw that post from Murray actually, of sort of the inside ball off a line out, and obviously the kicking is sort of very popular at the moment. And I don't know about you, but I'm personally a big fan of just like anyone on the pitch. Like if you think there's a chip on, you think there's a bit of a grubber on, and that someone might be able to chase, like whether it's your loose head or if it's the 10. I'm a major fan of them just giving it a go. Especially, look, obviously I'm not coaching international rugby, but I think it's a skill that anyone can do, and if they have the vision and if they think it's on, sure, give it a shot. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't,
you're dead right. Was it the Leinster A and Ulster A game there a couple of weeks ago? The number 8, I think, for Ulster put a little chip in off the back of a ruck, and not a chip, I think it was a grover, but he put a ball through anyway regardless. But I mean, it was the right decision. The execution was actually brilliant, and the Leinster winger did really well to get back and to cover it. But I mean, if I remember seeing that, and if you're a coach and your number 8 does that, and let's say the Leinster winger gets back like he did and cleans up, and if you're a coach and you say to your 8, what are you kicking that for? We didn't score and we gave away possession. I think you're off the wall. I think you're completely wrong, because it was the right decision. Because if that winger was a half second later in turning, it's a try, and it's an unbelievable assist for a number 8, or for anyone really, So I do think if it's on, it's on. And Noel McNamara, no, sorry, it wasn't. It was Adam Grigg said that as well. He said, you have to look at the decision versus the execution. If it was a poor decision just done because you felt like doing it, then I'm going to give out to you. But if it was a good decision, I'm going to be pleased with you. Now, if it's a good decision and it doesn't work out, well, then we look at the execution and we upskill you in what you've done. Now I know if it was a tight head prop, who put the kick in, you're not going to spend time with your tight head prop kicking all the time. But certainly you're going to look at him and go, that's on, that's the play we have within our vision. So I'm not going to, you can't call someone for that. They've employed what you've been trying to do. And it's just the execution was slightly off. But I do think you have to look at the decision versus the execution, because not only that, but a player knows themselves when they do something. And if it doesn't work out, the player knows themselves, look, that was on or that wasn't on, or a player will know, oh, geez, I shouldn't have done that. And the last thing they need is somebody else on top of that internal voice they have saying, what are you doing that for? And, where do you think you're playing? You're not a 10, or you're not they don't need that, And I think that's a big thing. The younger you go as well, if you have an under 16s team or an under 18s team, especially 18s to 20s, you can lose that vision, I suppose, of you might have, you're a hooker, you're a prop, you're a this, you're a that, and I think it's important that you don't lose that sense of letting the player make a decision if it's on, and it could be something as simple as an offload. If the offload's on, it's on. And I've been lucky enough to play or under some terrible coaches who would give out to you for throwing an offload, even if it was the right decision. And, I remember we had one coach in college, and he used to say, kiss a lot, keep it simple, stupid. And if you tried something that didn't come off, he'd be like, keep it simple. And you're thinking, but that's not the decision. That's not the decision in front of me. The decision in front of me was to give that pass or to give that offload. But he'd never ask you what you saw. He'd just ask you why you did it. And, I think it's important to keep that element of, or to keep that viewpoint of, was the decision correct? And asking the player what they saw rather than why they did something.
Yeah, I agree an awful lot with that. Like, I'm a major fan of sort of player autonomy over decisions and that kind of thing. And especially me, who I haven't been involved in rugby for an awful long time. So I'd, quite often be coaching players who have played rugby longer than I've been coaching it. So, at times you have to sort of sit back, let them run with it. And, in the school I'm coaching, we have this great number 9 who literally every training session comes up that he's seen some, random clip from like the 80s of this play that was done off a scrum or a line out or something. And he comes up and asks, can we try that? And yeah, absolutely, go for it. Like, if it makes them excited to play rugby, absolutely. I'm sure, like, it might, might score us a try, might get us a penalty in a good spot kind of thing. There's absolutely no harm in my view.
Oh no, we had a line out, I remember, and if anyone listening in was part of it, they'll remember this with fond memories. But we called it a Pablo Chacon, and what it was is we went up at the tail, came down, 9 came around like they were taking the ball, but the back lifter would take the ball and go straight. And we used to run. I don't mind sharing it either, because we have, like, this is a long time ago, but we saw it in an Ireland game, and I remember someone took a video of it and sent it into the coaches group and was like, that was class, let's do it. So we went training the next day and went out with the lads. It was under 18s at the time. And we said, look, we have this line-out move off the tail. Now, don't get me wrong, it's going to be fun to do, but everyone has to do their job involved. Like, the throw comes first, the lift comes first, whatever, that comes first, obviously. But we said, this is what we do, and what will we call it? And someone goes, or we said, I can't remember who we asked. We asked one kid, we said, what do you want to call it? He says, Pablo Chacon. And usually, they say, oh, B-ball or something ridiculous. And he just goes, Pablo Chacon. And we all kind of looked at each other like, where did you get Pablo Chacon from? And he goes, it's his dog. So next thing, we're looking at him going, why did you call your dog Pablo Chacon? He goes, it's the bad guy and we're the Millers. And it was just suddenly this whole conversation of, okay, can we get back to this line-out, please? We're going to call it Pablo Chacon. But I think just that little bit of enjoyment of giving the players that ownership of, what do you want to do with it? And we scored so many off it. Like, it's the best line-out move. I like, we enjoyed it so much that season. But when it was called, there was a genuine excitement amongst everyone. Like, oh, nice one, we're running a Pablo Chacon now. And when it worked, like, fellas would be laughing and they'd be running back and they'd be going, that was class. Like, this is good fun, because it was their move. It was nothing to do with us, And it's important that, I think even when you employ a framework or a decision or a defensive system or something, that when you ask the players or when you tell the players what it is, if they turn around and say, oh, well, can we not do it this way? You have to buy into them just as much as they're buying into you, because otherwise, why are they there? And I remember, again, with that same team, we had a move off a line out, and I remember the 10 said to me, we'll have to do it with a full man, because we were doing it off the 5. And I said, can we not do it off the 5? And he said, well, if we do it off the 5, we'll have 2 more defenders out there. And that's something that I hadn't spotted. And I said, well, you know what? You're actually bang on. Yeah, we'll do it off a full. And like that, a simple comment from a player shows that, you don't know everything. And I don't know everything, and even the backs coach, I actually blame Rochi for not copying that one. But, it was something that simple as you can chat to the 10 or you can chat to the 12 and say, what do you think of this? Is this okay? And be honest. And they can say, well, I actually don't think that works very well because of X, Y, and Z. And you said, you know what, you're actually bang on the money. I didn't think about that. And suddenly it's developed somewhere completely different. So in terms of giving the players autonomy, yeah, I think you have to. I think given a framework versus given a structure, they're 2 different things. Like, this is how we'd like to play rather than this is what we're going to do. And the framework just gives a lot more freedom to them. And if you look at, especially Racing, and I know the players they have in their backline, they can do anything they want, but they have a framework that they play within, and what they do within the framework is up to them. But they still have that framework around them, and to give them that autonomy and freedom, especially the likes of Russell or Zebo or Curtly Beale, that kind of player, to give them something to work with, but also say you can add to that in your own special way, is just going to make them a better player, because you're not only showing trust in them, but you're allowing them to do what they want to do, and they're obviously going to do that an awful lot better than what they're being pigeonholed into. I
think especially at sort of youth rugby and stuff, that fun element is major. And you know, even if you're part of one of the big six rugby schools here in Leinster, you know, if they're enjoying their time in rugby and they're playing a game that they like to play. I mean, if they leave the pitch saying, look, oh, we lost 40-0, but I actually had great crack because we tried this and this and this and this, you know, I think you're going to win with that. And my question was going to be, how do you sort of facilitate that sort of autonomy and fun? But I think, you know, as you said, it's more of, you know, the framework versus the structure kind of thing. And I know for us, with the school I'm coaching, the only thing that we prescribed was the attacking setup. But with the attacking setup, like, they had 4 or 5 different decisions they could make off the way we play. Everything else was up to them. So scrum plays, line out plays, you know, back plays, they came up with absolutely everything, and they could go wild with it, and it could change halfway through the season, and they could see a new one and just give it a shot. And it just made for a very sort of I guess like a fun and trusting sort of environment as well. And I think that can't be underrated at any level.
I think you nailed it there. There has to be an element of, I think enjoyment and fun are 2 different things. They should always constantly enjoy it. But the fun side of it, you know, like, what is fun? Like, you talk about messing and stuff like that. I think enjoyment comes from them taking ownership of something and seeing proof that it works, and being given, like you said, the trust to employ it as well. And like, you know, you mentioned the big six there and stuff. Like, I was involved with one of them for a few years, and there is a pressure there to do well, I suppose, but at the same time, you do want them to enjoy it, because I think fun is something we often forget, or enjoyment is something we often forget as part. That's why you play. You know, you go out to score tries, you go out to get your hands on the ball, you go out to, you know, to try and do something and to enjoy your time with your friends. Like, and, you know, if you have a second row, and I often refer back to him because I thought, like, he was unbelievable that season. But if you go back to Ali Muldowney, the year Connacht won the cup, you have a second, or the Pro 12 as it was, you have a second row who's standing in at first receiver like countless times. You have a second row standing in second receiver countless times. And I'm sure if you asked him, what did you prefer, playing a structured game where your job was to hit rucks and to ensure quick ball, or a game where you were literally standing first receiver maybe 15 times a game, which do you prefer? I'm sure he'll say, well, first receiver, because I was given decision making and I was, you know, given empowerment of what to do with the ball. And, you know, I think it's important with, especially, you know, people might have this view of, you know, forwards, you know, your 7, your 8 are your skillful ones, and your hooker's always a skillful one. I don't know how hookers do it. They always tend to be incredibly skillful, but you know, your front row can throw a pass no problem as well, you know, and especially if it's a link pass or if it's a catch pass, you should be trusting everybody in your squad to be able to do a catch pass. So, I mean, to have a second row, to have a prop, and Kyle Sinclair does it a lot with Bristol. He's an unbelievable link player, almost the same role as Muldowney took in that Pro 16. And, you know, to have your front row throwing those passes, or to be given that decision making, will I go, will I pass, will I step, will I take contact, like, that's what you want to do. You want to play the game, and you want to have that open expansion in front of you, and that does give you ownership. And I think that does lead to enjoyment, because it's your team. Like, it's not the coach's team. I don't think it ever should be the coach's team. It should be a player-led team. And if you have a team of players that can say, we'd like to do this, and we fully back this, or we can plan this, then, I mean, a coach's role is just facilitating at the end of the day and making sure, like, I mean, you'd love to go down to a training session where your players tell you, okay, stand back and we're going to take training tonight. That's incredible, you know. And we used to do that as well. And you'd say, okay, you know, you might have someone who can't train for XYZ reason, I don't know, but you can say, okay, well, if you can't train, you're still going to be there. Will you run this drill, or will you run a couple of drills? Give them a focus. Like, we want to work on breakdown speed, or we want to work on, I don't know, just simple passing or something like that. But you're in charge of that. Off you go. And to see how they're empowered then to do something it's something so small, but they take it so seriously. And then players see that they're running it, and they say, okay, well, that's a good drill. I better be, you know, on the money if it's ever me, you know. And we tried something as well, like an off-field captain. Like, if you weren't selected for a 23, you're an off-field captain to go as well. And, you give your thoughts, and you're essentially just as important as the captain on the field, because you're giving your thoughts afterwards and you're thinking, what went well and everything like that. And it was just a way of empowering people who weren't involved as well. That worked really well for us too, so I mean, there's loads of different ways to employ that, and I don't know half of them, and I'm not like, I'd never say that the way we did it is the only right way, but as long as it's the players feeling empowered and the players feeling like they can run something, then I think you're onto something straight away. If the players don't feel central to it, if they don't feel central to the style of play or the environment, then I think you're going to be in trouble, because it shouldn't be about you. It shouldn't be, if a team scores a try, they shouldn't be saying, okay, yeah, that's because the coach said to run this move. It should be because we recognized what was on and we took ownership of it. So I think that's very important. Like, ownership does lead to enjoyment and does lead to trust as well,
Yeah, and look, I think we could talk for hours about coaching philosophy, but I think my favorite thing, or favorite one I've heard, is sort of, your role as a coach is to make yourself redundant almost. And I think you've sort of mentioned that almost that you can stand back and that your players know exactly what they're doing, and you don't need to give any more input. So
absolutely,
I agree with everything.
Even just, you see it with captain runs, and I know, like, with club rugby, you don't get that chance, to have a captain's run, because it's not, you don't have the time, but like, we've done it a couple of times. Myself and Rochi, we used to do it, and another guy, me and a guy called Dave Murphy, who was coaching in Trinity as well. He was an excellent coach as well, a really, really good young coach actually as well. And we used to try do it the odd time, a captain's run on a Friday, back when we were in schools and stuff, and you could just say, right, we'll meet for half an hour after school, we've nothing to do with it, walk through it. And like, it was literally like, this is your half hour. We're only here for insurance reasons. We're just here to make sure that you've adult supervision. And afterwards, it's your half hour. So you're out in time. You do the warm up. Not even a warm up. It's only a walkthrough. But just to say, okay, we're comfortable with this. We're comfortable with that. And at the end of it, then you just call them in. You say, right, that's us done. We leave you with, I don't know, whoever's captain. And good luck, we'll see you. And myself and Rochi, or myself and Dave, or myself and whoever it was, would just walk off, and we just leave them together as a group. And we often found that when we did that, there was never messing. There was never someone talking. There was never someone not paying attention or looking at the clouds or something. They were all zoned in because it was theirs. And like you said, we were redundant. We were just there, I suppose, the spectators, And that's exactly where you want to get as a coach. You just want to be in the background there. If someone needs you, don't get me wrong, like, you're not going to, if someone asks you a question, you're not going to go figure it out or whatever it is. But well, sometimes you might, but you're just there to, like you said, to become redundant and to facilitate what's going on around you.
And I know there's a good few names dropped there as well, and obviously you've learned it a little bit from the guys that you've spoken to. So I'd love to sort of chat to you a little bit about your podcast work and stuff now, and actually just on those sort of points you made around your own coaching philosophy and stuff. Obviously, you've had Bernard Jackman, you've had Andy Friend on a couple of times, you've had Adam Griggs. Is that something that you find that those coaches also sort of align to, that kind of maybe the enjoyment or the player autonomy kind of thing?
Yeah, the coaching side of it, I started like that just during lockdown because we weren't out coaching. So it was just more for myself. I wanted to reach out, and I just wanted to reach out and learn, I suppose, while I was doing something. And like that, I said, you know what, I'll just package it up and I'll put it out. And I wasn't going to do it. I was never going to have a podcast because it's just not me, And a friend of mine said, just do it, do it for yourself, if anyone, and enjoy it. So that's exactly why I did do it, and it went really well. Well, for me personally, it went really well, I should say. Not I don't know. I don't mean chart wise or anything, but just personally, like in terms of learning, it's been excellent. And even it's funny because a lot of the time, like there's an episode with Mike Prendergast, and Prendy's from Limerick, a really nice fella, and that episode's 40 minutes long, but I was 2.5 hours on the phone to him, and this was before the baby, just to I wasn't ignoring anybody, anything like that. But No, it was yeah. So like the episode's 40 minutes long, but I was at least 2 hours on the phone to him, to the point where I was thinking I've really annoyed this man into talking to me. But he couldn't get me off the phone, but I couldn't get him off the phone, and it was that was it. We were just talking and sharing and trying to figure things out. And I suppose the position to be talking to someone of that level about an issue that I may have, or an issue that I face that I needed an answer for, to be privileged enough to be given that time was massive. And I suppose the first thing I found, I know you asked about autonomy, is that something they all give? And that is one thing that they do give. But what I found, the biggest thing they gave and the most kind thing they offered, or the kindest thing they offered, was their time. There was a time I reached out to Pat Lam, and that was a hit and hope. I didn't think it would work or anything like that, but he got back in touch with me and he said, yeah, no problem. We'll organize something, and we did. And the 45 minutes he gave me was before a training game he was having with Bristol. And it was the direct 45 minutes before that game. So he was clearly up the walls that morning, but he was still kind enough to offer his time. Like you said, Andy Friend came on a couple of times. I mean, he was on, his episodes are both 1 hour long. So that's at least 2 hours on top of the phone call before and after. And he couldn't have been kinder with his time. Bernard Jackman, even he still even, texts or whatever, and that's not part of anything. That's just him being kind with his time. And I think that's what I found with all of them, is they were just so open to sharing. And there was none of this kind of like, oh, I can't tell you that because someone else might hear it. It was, this is what it is, this is what we do, and share it with the world. And there was no nervousness. There was no, they had no agenda. It was just, you had a question of how we do something, this is how we do it now, and that was it. And to be able to talk to them like that was phenomenal. And people said like, oh, how did you get so much out of them, or how did you get him to open up on such a subject? Literally, I didn't. It just said, how do you do X? And 10 minutes later I knew, just because they were so generous. Now, in terms of autonomy with their players, they are very much the same. They like it player led. They have leadership groups. They have, and it's funny, even Adam Griggs talking about his leadership group compared to Pat Lam, how he organizes his leadership group. Like Pat Lam sends out questionnaires, he takes CVs, he conducts interviews. Adam Griggs said, you're the players, you organize it, and to have, like, even something's like, you listen to one, you think, okay, that's the way it's done. And then you hear another one, it's the complete opposite, but works just as well. There's no one way of doing things. And I think when it comes to the pitch, then, I mean, we all know how Pat Lam teams like to play, lots and lots of width. And like that, you have a guy like Kyle Sinclair on the ball a lot, to make decisions. But you also look at, let's say, how Connacht like to play. Connacht, like under Andy Friend, they play the exact same way, lots and lots of autonomy, lots of decision making. And I know, a couple of decisions in the last while, kind of, they've been debatable and people have talked about them a lot. But like at the end of the day, in the post-match interview, if you listen to him, he says, well, the players made the decision. I'll back them every day of the week, and maybe we need to be better somewhere else, but I will back my player for making that decision because they believe that was the best decision, So to have that at the professional level, at what is a cutthroat level, there's no, like, professional sport is so fickle, and to have that trust in your players at that level and to be comfortable enough to give them that trust proves that at an amateur level or at a club level that there's no reason not to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And is there anything, like, because I know you've had an awful lot of guests on, is there something that you've sort of taken away, or maybe one sentence or one bit of advice or something that has stuck in your mind since you talked to that person?
Yeah, there's been a few. One with Adam Griggs was definitely look at the decision versus execution, and it's something I'd like to think I always did it anyway, because I remember once a guy called Josh Dixon, he played six for us, and he's one of the best players I ever coached just because of his sheer, I suppose, coachability, if that's even a word. He just wanted to learn. He just wanted to be better, and he was an absolute gentleman. But I remember he played six for us, and one day he was carrying down the wing and he went to chip through, and he dropped the ball to kick it, but he forgot to kick it. He just kept running, and the ball like dribbled into touch, and he stopped, and he just kind of shook his head. And I was on the sideline with I think it was Rochi at the time, and the two of us we just burst out laughing. And Josh looked at us and I was like, "Do you forget to do something there?" And he was like, "I saw it in my mind." And I was like, "Yeah, it's fine, you know, whatever, next job." And you know, it was very, I suppose, easy at the time to laugh and to kind of joke, but you know, we had that relationship that you know, I wasn't laughing at him, like I was laughing at his reaction almost more than anything, because I saw what he wanted to do and he just didn't do it. But you know, so that's the decision versus execution. I wasn't going to give out to him for dropping the ball, because what he was about to do was right. He just didn't execute it, you know. So that was one piece of advice from Adam Griggs. And I suppose another one, and it's one that comes up quite a lot, and it's one, you know, at the end when I say, have you any advice, one that comes up a lot is always keep learning. Just keep looking to learn. And I suppose it's very simple to say, you know, keep looking to learn. And like I teach for a living, so it's right up my alley, you know. But it's more just keep reaching out, keep looking to improve. And you might think like okay, I have a good understanding of this, but when you break it down fully, how good is your understanding, or how better could your understanding be? What's the next level, I suppose? And I suppose that's something like I take essentially, because I mean, I haven't coached at a very high level. I'm not an elite coach. I was never an elite athlete. There's people that I went to school with who might listen to this and say, sure, Jeff Neville, he was useless. And there's people who I've probably coached or coached alongside and might be listening and say, sure, he doesn't know anything. Like I remember I asked him before and he said, I don't know. Like, well, that's a different story, is being able to say, I don't know, I think is a different thing. But, you know, there's people listening to this who might know me and say, sure, he's useless. But again, I'm just looking to get better as well, you know, and like I'm putting myself out there to get better. And if you don't put yourself out there, you never will. And I suppose the third best piece of advice is actually that I don't know. And it's something that Andy Friend mentioned, Andrew Brown mentioned it with Weegens as well. He was very big on it. To be vulnerable enough to be able to say, I don't know, is a very good thing. If a player asks you a question, like, what do we do in this situation? Or, you know, X, Y, Z, whatever it may be, to be comfortable enough to say, do you know what, I don't know. But then to turn around and say, but I will find out and I will come back to you with an answer. And to be able to say, I don't know, but I will find out, shows vulnerability, but it also shows that you have that desire to get better and to improve yourself. And, you know, that comes from having a good relationship with the players, and, you know, the players having a buy into everything you're doing too. And, you know, that comes from simple things, I think, like being on time, from being organized to knowing what you're going to do, to having a clear plan, to not just rocking up 5 minutes beforehand and putting out cones and saying, okay, we'll try this. It's having that plan and having that buy-in from the start that's important. And so those three pieces of advice, I'd say, always keep learning, the decision versus execution, and you know, just be comfortable, I suppose, be who you are. And, you know, don't say, oh, well, XYZ has all the answers, so I should have all the answers. You know, nobody has all the answers at the end of the day. And just being comfortable in yourself to be able to say that.
I think there's an expectation almost, or I guess everyone's aim would to eventually be, I think the term is like a professor in the sport that you're coaching. But, you know, I definitely aware of that, but it's sort of known that you don't have to be that right now. Like you can be a professor in your sport in 60 years. You know, you can say when you're old and in your rocking chair, right, I know absolutely everything about the sport that I used to coach. But, you know, you don't have to be there now, and it's a learning curve. And I guess that's why the analysis work that you're doing helps, obviously, other coaches, but also helps you with your own knowledge and how to apply that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think being an expert or a professor is never actually going to happen, to be honest, because the game changes so much. And, there's always something there. There's always a new defensive system. There's always a new way of tweaking a law to your advantage. Like, I mean, if you look at that caterpillar ruck in order to box kick, go back 10 years ago, you never saw that, and little things like that. And you used to see blockers, I suppose, kind of lining up alongside the ruck to stop runners coming through. But you don't see that anymore, So I think in terms of always being an expert or anything like that, I think you can know a lot, but I don't think you'll ever know everything about it, to be honest with you. Now, that may just be me, but there's just so many changes, and it's like life in general. You can never know everything.
Yeah, no, and I know obviously you've had a lot of success with the podcast as well. And if anyone hasn't listened into it, it's very interesting, and obviously it's quite good. Sort of the different characters that you hear, because you have the likes of, say, Fiona Hayes, who's like, Jesus, the most energetic person you'll ever meet in your life.
The most buzzing person I've ever spoken to.
And then you have the likes of, say, Bernard Jackman, who's probably one of the most knowledgeable people that you'll ever meet. So I guess my last question was sort of around maybe common characteristics that you've seen. Obviously, we've chatted about, that people sort of allow for these things in their coaching environments, but, them as people, have you noticed anything sort of a common trend amongst them?
Yeah, I suppose every last one of them, I know I've said it already, have been open. But I think that's a trend that you don't see amongst coaches, probably the lower leagues you go. I think sometimes you can, like, you could have a conversation with a coach on an opposition team, or you could ask them a question, and sometimes you might not get the answer you think you'll get, or sometimes you mightn't get an answer at all. And I think it's because, people think, oh, I can't tell him that secret because, he'll figure us out. But I think at the end of the day, to be at that level and to be so open was incredible. Like Fiona Hayes now, like you said, just a ball of energy. Like and like it was probably a good contrast, because I have quite a dull, laborious voice, and then suddenly you have Fiona coming in, and she's just a ball of energy. Well, it was funny, but that energy, and I suppose, shows she cares, and every last one of them cared so much. Every coach I spoke to, very, very open, very, very giving of their time, and very, very kind with their time. And it was Andy Friend who said it. He said, the greatest thing I can give you is my time, because I just can't get it back. So when he said that, and he's there on the phone with you for a couple of hours chatting sport, and just chatting rugby, and chatting problems, and chatting solutions. And he says, the greatest thing I can give someone is my time. And then he's giving that to you. It really, really rebounded home. And then to have every other coach do the exact same thing. Now, they may not have said it. They may not have said, the kindest thing I can give you is my time. But that's exactly what it was, So to be that open, and to be that, I suppose, open to sharing. And there's other people. There's another guy, another analyst. His name is Grant Davies, and he's on Twitter, GDD Coaching. Like, he's just so knowledgeable about the game, but everything he puts up is just open to look at, and he interacts with people. He I genuinely would say I talk to him, if not every day, every second day, about a video, or about a coaching problem, or about how to do something different, or what would you look at here. And even himself, like you said at the start of the show, at the top of the show, you've never met me in person. I've never met him in person, and I don't know if I ever will, with the way COVID's going. But just the fact that he's so open with his time as well, So it's really been eye-opening how open and how kind they are with their time. Another characteristic, I suppose, is just how much they care about the team, and about the sport, and about making sure that it's going from strength to strength. Again, chatting to Jerry Flannery, he said, it was just on the phone call afterwards. He said, why do you do it? Like, he asked me, and I was kind of thinking, wow, out of everyone I've spoken to has never actually asked me that, And I was chatting away, and I said, I just love the sport, and I just want to see. To me, it's very much like teaching. To see something register, or to see someone learn it and finally understand it, for me, is the payback, or just to get better, you know, at whatever they want to get better at, to see them do it, that's class, you know. And I said that to him, and he just said anybody who cares enough can be a coach. And I think players see that too. And that comes back earlier to what I said about showing up 5 minutes beforehand and chucking out a few cones. That's not caring. That's being there. They're two very different things, you know. And to care, I think you have to be on time. Well, on time is early, you know, but you need to have a plan. You need to have it registered, because at the end of the day, it's a team sport, and players will register very, very quickly. If you don't care, players will see that pretty much immediately. If they come up to you with a question and you say, I don't know, and then you don't go figure it out, players will know you don't care. So yeah, they just care so much about the sport. Like, they care so much about the sport that they were willing to talk to me for an X amount of time to make it public, you know. And they just want they want people to get better as well, and they want people to get better who they'll never meet. Like, they'll never meet me probably, you know. And I know I've met some of them, but like some of them I will never ever cross paths with again, but they've taken the time to help a stranger, you know. So those kind of characteristics, I suppose, was the most, again, very long-winded answer to a very short question, but those characteristics are probably the ones I saw most. It was just their openness and their care and kindness to helping people get better. And I suppose the other side of the coin is as well was their pure intelligence regarding the sport and regarding the topics they spoke about. Like, I could have spoken earlier. I may have answered a question earlier that was mindless, you know. You know, someone might listening in might think to themselves, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you know. But anytime I was talking to them, or any coach I spoke to, they knew exactly what they were talking about. They understood what they were talking about. They knew the why behind what they were doing. And they were just so intelligent. But they also were very quick to say, I don't know everything. And they said, the way I do things in the past was completely wrong. And you know, I can't remember who it was, but someone said, when I look back at where I was 5 years ago, I think to myself, what was I doing? Like, I was way off the mark. And to have that reflective practice involved in recognizing that you weren't God's gift, regardless of the level that you were coaching at, to recognize what you were doing could have been better, and to keep tweaking that and to keep looking forward to getting better. Every last one of them had that, you know. And chatting to Fiona, and she said, like me, she said that when I was going into the women's game, she was going into the men's game, and we both felt the same nerves, you know. But I mean, you're not going to know that without discussing it. And she benefited, I benefited, and it's from looking to get better, you know. And it's those little lessons that you'll take with you in order to keep getting better and to keep pushing yourself on. And you know, they recognize they're never going to be the finished product, but you know, what's that old saying? If you strive for perfection, you can reach excellence, you know. And it's important to keep that in mind too.
Yeah. Or I guess the advice there is, if you want to speak to some international coaches, set up a podcast. But that's
maybe.
No, that's brilliant, and that's very interesting. And obviously, if people wanted to listen into those podcasts or to have a look at your analysis work or anything, where would they be able to find you?
Yeah, well, the podcast, wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything like that. And it's a very original name. It's just the Loosehead Podcast, because I couldn't think of one, so that did the job. And in terms of the videos, then Instagram or Twitter, and by following the handle at the Loose H, as we discussed earlier. But and then if anybody wants those videos, they might not be any use, and you might not think they're any use. But if you want them to use with your own teams, or to send in as an example of something, just get in touch and I'll shoot them across. That's no problem. And you know, they're there for you.
And you can get some lovely The Loosehead merch as well. I have a hat myself, and I think there's some the Prop Life t-shirts getting made as well. So
yeah, well, COVID and Brexit now are putting a mix in that. So you know, if it's not one thing, it's another. So we'll
coming soon. It. All right, no, look, Jeff, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been massively interesting, and sure, best of luck with everything now as well, and good luck with the baby.
Thanks a million, yeah, and thanks for having me on. It was lovely to be asked.